Hey collectors, welcome to Star Wars Collected. I'm Jonathan. If you're new here, I hope you consider sticking around and subscribing. But if you've been here before, I want you to select that like button like you're selecting which helmet you want to wear into battle. Because what I have for you guys today are 6 new helmets from the Clone Wars era that I've just picked up and added to my collection. If you've been here before, you already know, but if you're brand new, you should know that I have an obsession with Star Wars helmets. I like one-to-one props in general. You can see some of the things I have around here, some blasters and things of that nature, some of my one-to-one scale guys, but what you can't see is that over here off camera are about 120 helmets. Right now behind the camera, I am renovating this whole downstairs area in my house to become my next collection gallery. So right now my helmets are in safekeeping over there, but I have a lot of them. But that doesn't mean I don't still want some more, right guys? So what I have for you guys today are a couple helmets that we're gonna do. This is gonna be part 1 of 2-parter, but we're gonna go through some 6 prequel helmets today, starting with this guy right here. I'm gonna start him backwards, try to tease you a little bit, but you probably already know what this is. This is a Phase 1 Clone Trooper helmet. I think Phase 1's helmets are harder to find. You know, Hasbro's yet to make a Black Series version of that. You can go way back to some Hasbro helmets that have the proportions kind of all wrong. The visors are way too big. It's a little stout. It's a little kind of awkwardly shaped. But anytime I see a Phase 1 Clone Trooper helmet show up, I am more intrigued than when it's a Phase 2, just because I have so many Phase 2. So this one is designed to be part of the Wolf Pack. It has the signature white and gray paint, all sort of in a matte finish. It's got a little bit of weathering here and there that you can see around. Overall, a pretty good helmet. It is cast because I can see a couple issues here and there where I would have filled it in with Bondo a little bit more if I was making it myself, but overall, a pretty good helmet. Now, the one thing I would say that I'm a little disappointed about, and it's kind of my fault, I should have noticed it when I was purchasing it online, assuming that the photos were good enough, that the decal here on the wolf of the signature piece is sort of like double stuck on. So you have what seems to be sort of a cutout here, which is maybe painted underneath, but then you have a sticker over top of that. So the white sort of has this edge going around here. Not my favorite way of doing it. I would prefer it have been used as a stencil and that you would have put this down, put the gray paint over it, done some masking, things of that nature. But from a distance, I'm sure it's gonna look fine. The Wolf Pack has a lot of cool different variations of the paint. I'm not sure that this one belongs to any specific one, but of course you have like Commander Wolf with not only his unique paint job, but his unique helmet. But there's quite a few people in the Wolf Pack with different variations, some like things with teeth and things of that nature. But this is just sort of a generic one as far as what I can recall. Overall though, for a Phase 1, there's a lot of variations of these out there. This one does have a pretty good job at adding the extra details. Here on the back, there's actually like a little cutout here. And on sometimes you'll find that there's like a little piece of plastic back there, almost like it's a brake light or something like that. Not everyone kind of gets that detail. And this little area right here has some nice ridging and ribbing as well. Again, not everyone gets that, but you know, all in all, overall, I think it's a pretty good looking helmet. And I'm happy to have another member of the Wolf Pack on my shelf. Helmet number 2 today is this one right here. Let's see if you can guess it. If you guessed Gregor, you got it right. So Gregor shows up in a Clone Wars episode. He is a clone that is on a planet with kind of a deserty type thing. It's one of the weirder episodes out there, or arcs in the Clone Wars. It's the one with all the droids and the little tiny commander, at least thinks of himself as a commander, kind of a guy looks kind of like a frog riding around in him. But yeah, Gregor has amnesia. He doesn't remember that he was a clone and he's kind of working a crappy job. And then at the end of that, he finds his armor and he comes to the rescue, and we assume he dies in a fiery blaze, but ends up showing up in Rebels as a crazy person. The personality is very different in that, so I don't know if the explosions rattled his brain a little bit too much. He should have been wearing his helmet, I suppose. I always liked Gregor. I thought he was a cool character, a cool different thing that the Clone Wars did. You can see this one has a lot of paint on it, these little hash mark type things, and you can see the different gray bits here. This person had done a really good job, I think, of probably laying down latex or something of that nature to allow them to paint over it and then peel or chip up those bits to kind of get you a little bit more realistic version of weathering. You know, it's not the most perfect paint job in the world. I feel like this is a little bit heavy, the amount of dirt that's on top, but overall, this actually probably took that person quite a bit of time. Good little nicks around the edges here where it would be doing the wearing. The visor looks a little off. It's not quite perfect as far as this sort of flow from one to the other, but it is a very cool piece in that this person took the time to add some electronics. And you can see now when it's all lit up, it's got this really cool blue glow. Again, it does show some of the imperfections there in that this sort of black piece that comes up is not quite right, but there's this really beautiful mesh behind there and it looks really cool, really techy. But overall, a cool helmet related to a specific clone in the Clone Wars that I thought was pretty cool, and I'm glad to have it added to the collection. Moving along to helmet number 3 here. Take a guess. Did you guess it was Scorch? You would be right. So this is from the games with the Republic Commandos in it. This one is similar, very similar to the Gregor piece. This helmet, this mold seems to be a little bit larger in size, and honestly a little bit maybe more appropriate in size. I feel like this is about the size that it should be. It's probably only 5% larger, maybe 10% larger than the Gregor one, but this just seems a little bit more how it should be. The detail on this one is similar. Again, I think there was some kind of mold used, like it's definitely a cast piece, just judging by some of the finishing on here. Again, another really good paint job on this. The use of, I think, latex or some sort of block down there. What you can do is you can kind of paint the helmet all one color, say white, and then you can kind of go in with your paintbrush, put this latex stuff down, then go ahead and add your next color to it, so gray, and then you come back and you chip that up, and then it allows you to sort of peel it back, and it reveals this really cool organic shape underneath. You don't have to do it that way. You can also scratch it off. You just run the risk of going too deep, or you can of course just go back over top and add white paint on top, but this actually gives you just a little bit of depth here. This has got some cool tones going on, so not only is it have the white and the sort of grayish, just a slight tint of blue to it, but mostly gray, but there is a lot of yellow and orange and things of that nature around here, even within some of the scratches, which is pretty cool. You might be noticing the very bright LED here on the side, so that is a nice feature. No on and off switch on that on the inside as far as I can tell, so it is sort of just you have to plug the battery in, pull it out type thing. Good detail all the way around. It is, I would say, maybe a slightly crisper mold than the other one had. And a big thing, if you've played those games and you're familiar with those helmets, is that they all have this sort of light up feature. So not only does this one have the light on the side here, but it also has a light up visor, which is basically impossible to tell now that I'm looking at it from this side. Perhaps in the dark it shows up better on the inside of the helmet. You can see that there is like a little light strip in there at the top, which is where it's shown in the games and video, but it just doesn't really seem to be going down all that well. You might be hearing on my microphone the high-pitched squeal that it makes. So if you were wearing this around all day at a cosplay convention or something like that, you'd probably go insane because it's such a high-pitched squeal. But still, kudos. Electronics are nothing I've ever pursued putting in my helmets, so whenever I buy something that has it in there, I like to give kudos to the people who made that, because that does take that extra step. If you've been looking for variety in this video, you're not going to find a ton, because we have one more helmet here. Do you know what it is? You probably do. So this is Sev. This is another Republic Commando out there. This is a much different paint job, obviously, much more organic with this sort of slightly misshapen hand. I'm not quite sure I've seen a pinky that looks like this in my past. But again, it has electronic features here on the side, much less weathered than some of the other ones. I will say that the kind of white background of this one does show waviness to these lines a little bit more, makes it look a little bit more handmade than the other version. But overall, it's very good. It has, I believe it's using the exact same mold as that one. I don't see any variations between the two of them. The paint job on this is a little less complex. Obviously, it's much more handmade. It also has the light on the side here, and also has the visor that lights up too. It is running into the same issue though, where it has that very high-pitched squeal, and then also the little light that's in here is really not very visible. This one has a couple areas where it kind of dips down a little bit, and you can just slightly see a little bit of that EL glow going on in there. But you know, great idea. I appreciate the ambition, but just wasn't quite successful in having the, I imagine, the desired effect. Now in the dark, maybe a little bit of blue lights up there and you can kind of see it. But you know, overall, another good helmet. So this means that I have 2 out of the 4 of Delta Squad. So I'm on the hunt for the other 2, I suppose. When they come to me, they'll come to me. But in the meantime, I've got a pretty good collection now between the 3 that I just showed you, and then I already had an existing one that was kind of all black. So I have a little budding collection here of these Republic Commandos. All right, let's look at something that's not a Republic Commando. How about that? What do you guys think this one is? Maybe from the back it looks a little Darth Vader-y, I don't know. But this is the Second Sister. Second Sister appears in Jedi Fallen Order, a fantastic video game. The sequel is also very good. I just haven't made it all the way through yet. I'm very busy working on other things, but a really great video game series, and I think her story was very compelling in the first version. But a pretty cool helmet overall, other than my fingerprints and a little bit of dust being all over this. This is a really solid helmet, and I paid like next to nothing for this thing. That's why I was convinced that it must have been some sort of mass-produced type thing that really wasn't any good. But it's got some nice like velvet here on the inside, so it's nice and comfortable. The visor is really well trimmed out in there. There's even pads inside, but it is a cast piece, which I prefer. sure. There are a couple places here and there on the paint where the gloss is not quite as good. Maybe it's been nicked up a little bit, but I don't really mind that. Like, you know, I kind of like my Darth Vader helmet to be like pretty clean, even though it wasn't so clean in A New Hope and things like that. But really, really clean edges going in through here. And that is always a place where I struggle whenever I do my helmets and things of that nature. So really impressed with that. There is like a mesh underneath here, which is coming from that velvet, but it makes it so it can breathe a little bit, but looks super cool underneath that. So every once in a while, you just get lucky. You just have to consistently look, keep looking. But I think this helmet was under $100 off of eBay. I thought I was buying a worse quality piece, and I ended up with something that I think is really, really good. All right, and last but not least, we have this one right here. Gee golly willikers, what could it possibly be? I think this is a pretty obvious one. This is Gar Saxon. This is from season 7 of the Clone Wars, the Mandalorians, as they are sometimes referred to as, where you had a large group of Mandalorians who were technically being loyal to Mandalore. Whoever the ruler of Mandalore is, just happened to be Darth Maul, which then kind of put them against other Mandalorians. Very complicated. If you haven't watched The Siege of Mandalore or season 7 of the Clone Wars, make sure you do. The animation is incredible and it's a really cool story. So this character has a couple different helmets throughout the series because he shows up again in Rebels, but I think this one is so super cool and so different. The Mandalorian helmet will always be the coolest helmet we've ever seen. So any variation on it, honestly, I think is really tough to do. I see a lot of people that are Mandalorian mercs, and I really appreciate all the work that they put into it. But rarely do I see one that I think is even at the level of a Jango Fett, a Boba Fett, something like that. So I think doing modifications on that helmet can be really tough to try to equal that level of cool. But this one has a lot of really cool things going on with it. So there's actually like a little wave indentation here on the visor, which is pretty cool, and it's what you see on the show. But obviously it's the horns that make this one so different. So you have 2 horns on the side here, 2 horns on the back. There are other variations of this for other Mandalorians, but that is what this one has. Otherwise, the detailing on the side is a little simple because of the Clone Wars keeping a little simple. There's also this little dip here in the brow, which I think looks pretty cool. But you have these kind of triangles and dots on the side, and just some really kind of simple weathering here and there, but it's pretty effective, I think, overall. This was bought very pre-owned, and what I mean by very pre-owned was that it actually bought it broken. So it said in the listing, this had a tumble or something like that, and it was broken. So this piece right here was not completely broken off. This bottom piece right here was a broken off piece, and then this piece had just sort of shattered. So I just kind of worked with it a little bit, slowly kind of moved it back into place best that I could, and then glued it. So at this point, I could mask that part off and try to repaint it. Matching blacks is pretty difficult to do though. So I might end up just using maybe like a paint marker on here at some point and just kind of covering that up. The good news is that this helmet is always going to be displayed looking this direction right at you. So no one's ever going to see that. I'll know it's there. You'll know it's there, so don't tell anybody, all right? But overall, just what a cool sort of interpretation of Darth Maul into like the Mandalorian, almost like cubism type thing that they use. It's just the shape is different, but it meshes. I just think this is one of the helmets from Clone Wars, especially season 7, that just really stood out. And as soon as I saw it, I knew I needed to have it. And I think overall, it is a pretty cool looking helmet. All right, collectors, well, there you have it. These are 6 new helmets that are roughly from the prequel era. I love helmets. What can I say? There's something about them that just makes it all feel so real and so tangible. I like to think that they're like artifacts, as if they existed previously, like on Thrawn with the things behind me, things like that. One cool thing that I just realized as I was putting these away is that on these 2 helmets right here, these little front pieces that kind of look like vents are actually buttons. So when you click those, I imagine that turns on the electronics on and off. Brilliant. I'm always blown away by this community that we're a part of. People who make things, people who collect things. Just there's so much talent of people just doing this for a hobby, and I think that is such a clever idea. It looks great and it works so well, and I just think it's amazing, just like you guys are amazing. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you're following me on Instagram. It's a place where you and I can connect a little bit more directly. You can DM me there and stuff like that, but I'm always putting up things. Anytime I find a really good deal on a helmet, on a hot toy or something like that, I want to share that with you guys because I know collecting on a budget is a big thing. Overall though, I really appreciate you guys watching. We are going to have a part 2 to this with helmets that exist past the prequel era, so we have another 5 or 6 of those, so make sure you subscribe to see that as well. All right guys, see ya.